Hello and welcome to the first episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I named it that because it's basically my story, being a 56-year-old man, having raised two children, having an elderly parent, two elderly parents actually, who needed my support. The squeeze generation that I find myself in, having had a divorce, having gotten sick, having had careers ups and downs. It made me a student of how to thrive when the world just seems to be pulling me in a million different directions. The responsibilities of family, of elder care, the responsibilities of a career that has ever more consequence and responsibilities. Then the changes in my body, how I lose weight, how I exercise, how I eat, how I feel every day, the aches and pains. I had never been in the hospital until I was in my late 40s, never near overnight, and then several times being hospitalized. So that change in the way I have to deal with life because of my physical limitations is also another challenge for me. The other challenge, which is even the harder part, is the mental and emotional and the spiritual part. That the part where you start to see that the things around you don't fit. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot in his work, where we are conditioned over our lives and we see things over and over in our lives that we've created the same, kind of the mundane. We've done it all, we've seen it all, we bought the t-shirt, and now somewhere in our 30s, 40s, or 50s, we say, is that all there is? We've made the money, we've had our successes, we've had our failures, maybe we've been beaten to a pulp. You've heard the expression, died at 40, buried at 70. So midlife is a time that Brene Brown calls the great unraveling. It's when everything you knew or thought you knew starts to not be so clear and so sure. So you start looking for ways, or at least I did, to either run from that realization, that little whisper inside that's telling you that things need to change, that this isn't really what you wanted. You can hide, you can chase after other things, you can anesthetize yourself with more money, you can anesthetize yourself with drugs and alcohol and sex and all kinds of things, and buying things. My personal favorite is the credit card. So midlife for me, it's not really a specific age either. You can figure that out in your teenage years. Sometimes people are forced to grow up and see the world in a different way. You can get that in your 20s when you see that what fulfilled you doesn't fulfill you anymore. It doesn't really matter how old you are. Old, young, it's, for me, the definition of midlife for this podcast is when what was working no longer seems to be working. Or if it's working, it's no longer satisfying. So how do I address that? First, how do I allow that in? If I have family, if I have responsibilities, if I have a career, a reputation, a persona that I put out to the world, how do I now negotiate with that and change it? That's scary. So most people don't want to do that. They push that down. And they push that down to their detriment, because I believe that our soul is talking to us constantly about evolving, of exploring the world. I think our soul loves adventure, and I don't mean just jumping off of mountains. It loves experiencing new things. It loves creating. It loves connection between people. And it wants to renegotiate at some point, after all the striving, after all the childhood decisions and choices that we're living out of start to wane. We need to start listening to that voice. That's my premise for this whole podcast. So it's going to be interspersed with my ponderings, excerpts from the book that I'm writing, Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. That's a plug for something that doesn't even exist yet. But I'm also going to have guests. I'm going to have guests who come in and talk about what do we have to do differently in midlife for nutrition and our health. I'm going to have mental health experts talk about suicide, depression, mental health issues that are running rampant at people in their 40s and 50s. Suicide is becoming the fastest cause of death for people my age. Illness. I'm going to have a doctor who talks about illness and how we create 90% of the maladies that we hit in old age are from our lifestyle, are from either suppressing stress or fighting life or not dealing with things, or what we put into our bodies. All those Diet Cokes, what is that doing to us? So I'm going to have people who are experts in that field. I'm going to have people who are global executives talk about juggling being that type of person with that type of responsibility, and then having teenagers at home or having elderly parents. We're going to talk about how to age in place, how to set up your life for the next chapter. We're going to talk about relationship. We're even going to talk about sex. I'm so excited. I have one of my favorite people who is already a guest on the program to talk about sex in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, so we can enjoy that for our whole entire life. We're going to talk about spiritual things. I would love it if you would write in the comments, direct message me, any subjects that you're challenged with that you want me to find a guest and talk about. I am happy to do that. My mission is to help us enter into midlife and not have to have the crisis. It may happen. The crises happen. So you lose a job, you get sick, life smacks you upside the head and tells you, listen, change, evolve. But it doesn't always have to be that way. For the chosen few, we can listen to those who've come before and maybe listen to a podcast, maybe listen to an insight from someone who's been there and start the process before the crisis. I also don't believe that midlife is an event. I don't think you arrive at midlife, you deal with midlife, you have a crisis, you buy a sports car, you have an affair, you change careers, and then you're done. I believe it's entering into the next phase of our lives. That this is a time where we start to open up, where we start to get more vulnerable, where we start to question everything and start to learn about ourselves. It's a time for contemplation, self-reflection. It is definitely a time for pen and paper. I'm a big advocate for pen and paper and quiet time. So I hope you enjoy this. This is a labor of absolute love and passion for me. Again, any subjects you want to hear about, please put them in the comments, direct message me, and I'm on this thing. I hope you enjoy. We have 10 episodes that are being launched at once, and any feedback would be great because this is all new to me. Thank you. I love you, and have a great rest of your day.